much to talk about, man. There is so much to talk about here on Leave It in the Ring. You know, it's crazy because I had called up the milk car yesterday, and I was like, yeah, dude, there's not a lot of stuff to talk about. What the fuck was I thinking, dude? What was I
Yeah,
on? A milk car?
I was tired and I didn't even pick up on it myself, to be honest. But yeah, we've got
Oh,
a big fight. We've got a big fight
this
this
weekend.
weekend.
It don't even seem like it. You know, and there's been a lot of build up to this fight. This is a fight that I was really been like super excited. We got Garcia versus Campbell coming up this weekend. We got to talk about James Mandingo Kirtland. He's got to retire, and then we got to talk about Mark Kriegel's excuse for Lomachenko not winning that title, not retaining his title against Teofimo Lopez. And there's a bunch of other stuff. You know, we got to talk about Sergio Martinez. We got to talk about Sean Porter, talking about Terrence Crawford. There's a lot of stuff here to talk about. Hopefully, we can get these phone lines figured out here on Leaving the Ring, and we could talk some boxing here. Oh man, I got the old line number up. I apologize for that. Sorry about that, guys. So we're just gonna have to put that in the chat room. I'll have a milk cart put that in the chat room if you want to call in because I got the old number up.
Yeah, I'll do that
On the
right
banner,
now.
man. So I apologize. I thought I updated it. What happened here? Jesus. All right, let's see really quick. Shoe Shine here. Dave 408 says Sergio Martinez versus GG someday, please. Someday, please. I think it could happen, but I think Gennady Golovkin's got to move up. He's got to make that jump. Even Canelo and Eddie Reynoso had said already, hey, that fight's still feasible, but he's got to come up. 168, which I'm not sure that, Gennady Golovkin wants to do. I'm not sure about that. He hasn't tested the waters of moving up. So, yeah. Nato says, I Corte versus De La Hoya's biggest victory. Hell of a fight. Dude, that was a phenomenal welterweight fight. Too bad they didn't do it again.
I think I agree with that. I think it's his biggest victory as well.
A-Rod wants us to talk about on the Stack Up show, Trinidad versus Charlo. We'll definitely get up Trinidad, dude. I think, man, that would be fun to talk about. Even at 147 and 140, even at 160, I think there's a lot to talk about there. With Tito Trinidad, the great Tito Trinidad and stuff. Now, Calzaghe was an artist in the ring, heavily influenced by his father. Absolutely, we did talk about that there on the Stack Up show. But let's move on. Let's talk about Ryan Kingring. I don't even know. How do you even say his nickname, dude?
I think it's King. I think it's King Rye, David.
King Rye. There you go. King Rye. Garcia. These kids, man, they come up with these weird nicknames. They don't got not like the way we used to do back, a 90 babies and stuff, Flaco, 97 rough.
Yeah.
Blood. Even look at D-Style. That's all those are all MC names. Coming to the mic.
Yeah, they are actually.
G-Funk, G-Funky.
You mentioned it.
Even Chicano Prophet. Chicano Prophet is like a straight up B-boy nickname. But King Rye sounds like the rye bread. Can I have one of those? Can I have a marble rye? Thank you. That's what it sounds like to me and stuff. But okay, so King Rye Garcia versus Luke Campbell. Let's get down to the breakdown. I didn't even look up to see the odds on that, the betting odds, man. Did you have a chance to check that out? Do we know what the betting odds are?
I have not, David, but I will look at them as soon as I get the phone line sorted, which I'm about 30 seconds away from.
Okay, so I'll wait on that. And so what I'll talk about is about Sergio Martinez, Shoe Shine Boxing. That's crazy Sergio's still fighting. I meant Stack Up. Prime, that's what he's talking about. Put him in the Stack Up. Prime Sergio versus Triple G at 160. But here we are at 2020. Sergio is back. Yes, it is kind of crazy. I was talking to Brian Fogg about this. This is a couple of weeks back when Sergio Martinez was having that announcement. And even seeing his last fight, where they ended up, I believe it was like a headbutt or something like that. And he was doing actually really, 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 really good. He was saying the thing with Sergio is how is his body back, because that was the only thing that was preventing him to keep moving forward in his career. Remember this, he had so many surgeries, even leading up into the Miguel Cotto fight. This guy was going in with a bad hip, a bad knee.
The bad knee was terrible. Yeah,
his knee, yeah. I mean, it had to be reconstructed. So how realistic is it for Sergio Martinez to get back into any type of real talks of him facing any elite fighter at this moment? I still think it's kind of a fetched dream. It's something that he's chasing. Is it about money, or is it about that he felt like his legacy shouldn't have ended by losing to a smaller man in Miguel Cotto at 160? I think there's a little bit of both, man. I think there's a little bit of both of that there when it comes to Sergio Martinez, which I truly believe was just one of the greatest middleweights out there. You know, you can argue with me about it all you want. Even some people will try to even argue with us about that. He ducked Gennady Golovkin, which is kind of hilarious because Gennady was not even on anybody's radar. You know, and
I've heard people say that before. I just don't get it.
I don't get it either.
How do you duck the WBA regular IBO champion? It just doesn't make much sense to me.
Mm. And also, he was a prospect, hadn't done anything. Okay, well, he was breaking out of the prospect, circle, but he hadn't done anything. And it was really like, why would Sergio Martinez face that guy? It was like, like I said, I'll go back in. It wasn't even in the radar. Where he was able to go to his home country, make a shitload of money, okay, and or he was gonna opt to go fight Gennady Golovkin, who really wasn't ready for the world to witness. Like nobody honestly knew about Gennady Golovkin unless you were like a really, really hardcore fan. I mean, I go again. Like I've had like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 different interviews with Gennady Golovkin about, in that period of time that everybody was saying that Sergio Martinez was ducking him, and not once in those interviews or anytime in the Gmails anybody ever mentioned him going to face Sergio Martinez or Martinez facing Gennady Golovkin. You know, I mean, Abel Sanchez and Gennady at that time were talking about everybody from 154 to 168, saying that they can go to any weight division. They were willing to do that, but they've never done it. So, yeah, I always thought that was kind of strange.
Yeah, and obviously he had fights that at that point would have brought him more notoriety and more money. And I don't think anyone should ever accuse Sergio of ducking fights. I mean, he took on pretty much everyone that was placed in front of him and fought very well, against people. So yeah, I mean, look at what he did to Paul Williams. That knockout's always going to be in my memory.
And they predicted it from the rematch. You know,
yeah.
Here's the thing: is the first match I predicted that it was going to end up in controversy, and it ended up being just that. But that second fight, when they brought out the crown, and he made Paul Williams go, head first into the canvas. Nobody had ever done that to Paul Williams. Nobody had ever really seen Paul Williams hurt, and Sergio Martinez was able to do that. But he's doing his comeback campaign here. And it's great to see him there. He's actually he's hoping to get Mariota, Japanese fighter, at 168. He's willing to go. What I'm hearing, he's willing to go over there to face him later on this year. I don't think that's a bad fight, but I don't think he could win that fight if his body is not recuperated to where it needs to be here, Mokar. I mean, Mariota's a big guy, and he's a good fighter. He's not a slouch, but he's not much talked about.
Let's see if we can hear a caller now. We just had a caller call in. Hello, caller. Can you hear me? Hello. I'm sorry, Dave.
No, I don't hear nothing.
I've been working at this. I can hear you, but apparently Dave can't hear you, and you can't hear me.
Don't worry, we'll figure it out on next show.
Sorry about that, my brother. It's my fault. There's something going on with my mixer that has not happened before. Yeah,
Shoeshine Boxes, Sergio and Dmitry Pirog never happened. People forget about what Pirog did to Danny Jacobs. They absolutely did. There was a lot of management problems in Pirog's part. He was fighting in his home country, just couldn't seem to get over here overseas. So that was really shit. I remember when we had Pirog on the show, and I remember the frustration in their part where, they couldn't get nothing going. It's not. And you know what's crazy is that, I always see people go like, well, if this so-and-so fighter beats the star, he automatically becomes a star. And I was like, that's not necessarily how things really go,
Well, ask Rigo about that.
Absolutely.
Let's read all
Absolutely.
about that.
The only ones, Gilbert says, the only ones that say that is Steve Kim and then his parakeet followers. Yeah, it's, you know what? Steve and his listeners, they definitely had a very, like a big resentment towards Sergio Martinez. We always used to make fun of that. You know, I don't know what it is. I don't know
Really?
why Steve didn't. I
That
think
actually
now though
sur-
Steve appreciates him, but before he did it,
that
you know.
actually surprises me.
Yeah, Steve
I
really
didn't.
didn't have there was not a special place in Steve's heart for Sergio Martinez. But now I see Steve tweeting about him and shows the appreciation. I think where Steve was at was like people, I don't know, you know, he was always riding the Gennady Golovkin train, so didn't want to disappoint his listeners there. You know, because that was definitely when you have a certain cult followers, you don't want
I
them to
remember there was a
turn against
guy from
them.
like Australia that would
Uh,
call into the next round on the Leave It in the Ring radio network, and he had like Triple G in his name or something. It was that there. Triple
Oh,
G
I
definitely has
blocked
his
that guy on Twitter. Yeah, he was, dude. It was like
Triple
the
G definitely has his hard. I mean, when you're naming yourself after a current fighter, yeah,
dude.
you're a pretty hardcore fan.
He had Triple G culture as his description on his Twitter handle thing. Okay,
Wow.
that says it all for me. When I saw that, and I was I think it was about because of the Danny Jacobs fight, and this guy was like, no, he won. You know, it was a clean win. Blah 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 blah. And remember when Gennady Golovkin and Abel Sanchez were complaining about his, like, you know, that they couldn't get on the plane because they were super sore. And I'm like, yeah, that's because you were taking a lot of shots. You know, you don't get super sore, you know, from not taking any shots. So, but yeah, that's here and there, man. But yeah, so going back to that, like Sergio Martinez, is it a good fight for him? What do you think, man? You think Murrieta is a good fight for Sergio Martinez? Is that a fight he should really pursue? Or should he
Um,
just hang it up?
I honestly, I think he should just hang it
Do you
up.
think he's going to end up
Um,
becoming like he's going to get Kirtland in
I
the
hope
ring?
not. You know, I actually did a video on that on Sunday. Unfortunately, my sound wasn't working, and I'm starting to think it's the mixing board that I'm also using for these calls.
Mm.
I did the damn thing 3 times, and none of the times was it uploading with audio. Funny enough, when I played a sound file, it did. But yeah, I don't think that he should be fighting still. I'm sorry. Um, Hopefully, he's retired with enough money and he's not financially strapped. Um, but yeah,
It's
I don't
it's
need to, I don't need to see him fighting anymore.
it's kind of sad because like when you think of that financially for fighters, Tyson had a great quote about fighters mishandling money. He said this on Howard Stern, which if you know me, I'm a huge Howard Stern fan since been listening to the guy since the '80s.
Yeah,
But he was on there, and Howard Stern had asked Mike Tyson, like, you know, how did you lose all this money? And Mike said, look, a lot of fighters, including himself, and you could say this about a lot of the guys now that are still pursuing the chase of glory and money, you know, the yellow brick road. Mike said this about them, saying there's an art to handling money, and a lot of fighters we just don't know how to handle it. We don't know that art form, and it's so
especially
true.
people who grew up in poverty
In
too.
poverty, yeah, you know, James Kirtland comes to mind. Here we saw him on Saturday night. James Mandigo Kirtland. Here was a guy at 154. Um, you know, just looked like pure doomsday to anybody. At ask El Perro Angulo, you know, Alfredo Angulo, who stepped in there and gave us a phenomenal back and forth war between the two, but ended up getting the short stick from James Kirtland. You know, James Kirtland outside of the ring had so many problems. You know, one was getting in the ring. One was, you know, his up and down relationship with the great Ann Wolf. Um, you know, and you know the layoffs, uh, the blowing up in between fights. And I've always said this about certain fighters. They always seem to, when it's kind of a little too late to get back what they once had, like they finally hold them down and they go like, okay, I need to get serious. But it's gone and past. You know, the hourglass is empty for you. And Saturday night was no was that certain case for James Mandingo Kirtland. He gets in there and he gets starched again in the first round. The way he did against, God, what's the name of the Japanese kid that did it with him? And it was off a jab. And this was actually a much more primed Kirtland the first time when he had an upset loss. He gets in there, and again, man, he just gets blown out. And I actually thought he was getting punished a lot more than he should have. I thought the ref should have done his job and jumped in and saw immediately he didn't have his legs underneath him. You could see his eyes were glossy. James Kirtland is a fighter. He was willing to go back at it. But what was alarming was after they finally stopped and the ref finally stepped in and waved it off, was he said, "What happened?" Did you hear that, Amilcar? Or anybody? He said, "What happened?" He didn't know
Yeah,
what
I'm
happened.
very sad. And sorry, I was trying to get this thing sorted so we could at least get some callers. I know people have been wanting to call in, but yeah, honestly, I haven't wanted to see Kirkland again since the Canelo fight. Really, the way he went out, the length of time he was out. Once I see a guy get knocked out like that, it's usually the sign of the end, and
This is
it
the
just
end.
really wasn't nice to watch.
Oh, it wasn't.
And honestly, people who care about boxers really shouldn't be trying to get these guys to continue along those lines. And like you said, the that was all after already being knocked out by Nobiro or Nobihiro, I think Ushida.
Oshida,
Um,
yes.
yeah, who knocked him out off a jab. So but the Saul Canelo Alvarez knockout was really all I needed to know to say I really don't want to see this guy fight anymore.
Oh God,
Um,
dude, that was like so unnecessary. But when fighters have contracts and fighters on those contracts they're subjected to an amount of fights that they have to produce because they're under contract of getting fighting for what they signed for. That's the case there. With. Well, here's a good question. Let me get to this question here from Nado. He said,
yeah,
"Who's the biggest waste of talent? James Kirtland, Edwin Balario, or Ike Buche?" That's a good. What do you think?
Ike Ibiabuchi.
The president?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, just off of the stories I've heard about him.
Brian
Um,
Fogg interviewed his manager. It was on the when we had a Leave It Ring website, and that was
yeah,
a hell of an interview, dude. And it was crazy that Ike, the president, uh, his train thought of the way things, because of where he was from, was so distorted. Like even for his own country, it was so distorted. You know what I mean? Comes over here and he
hmm
kind of felt like, well, I could do what I want. Like what's wrong what I'm
yeah,
doing? He never comprehended like the things he was doing was not like you can't do that, bro. It's a crime.
hmm
But yeah, I agree with you. Ike is there. Edwin's death was definitely tragic. But that was another very tortured soul. The guy wanted to fight. He was banned. He had to go to Japan. He had to fight out there. Came back. Golden Boy tried everything they could to get him USA fights. He struggled with drugs. And the same thing with James Kirtland. The guy struggled with a lot of stuff. He was self-destructive. All three of these fighters were very self-destructive.
yeah. And the only reason I really say Ike Ibiabuchi over the others is because obviously he's a heavyweight too,
Right.
and you know, I, like I said, from what I heard, this guy was like a wolf. We know he was a savage. Remember the Tua
Oh,
fight?
dude, yeah. No, actually, Gilbert just brought it up right now here in the chat room. Greatest
Oh, I
heavyweight
didn't
fight was
see
Tua and
that. Yeah,
Ike.
I'm still working away at this. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, absolutely. The Tua fight was all you really needed to know about where this guy potentially was going to be able to go.
Nope. I definitely agree, man. Well, when you're looking to try to fix that, I gotta definitely start to touch on. I gotta touch on what Mark Kriegel um, started saying on a segment on ESPN. Let me look it up here. I got it down here, and first off, Lomachenko hasn't been so graceful about his loss over Teofimo Lopez. He wasn't when Salcido beat him. He definitely couldn't accept it. He had a lot of issues on it. Um, But
doing
let me put
was
down
upping the level of risk so he could demonstrate his greatness.
here. Let me see if I can get it up here on the overlay. So give me 1 second here. Let's bring it back. And then tell me what you think, man.
Because
Yeah.
you want to fight at 135, you're a lightweight, but he's not a natural lightweight. And what Lomachenko found himself doing was upping the level of risk so he could demonstrate his greatness. And I know Dre disagrees with me, but he kept upping the level of risk to demonstrate something that would last for all time. And eventually, he upped it too much.
Yeah,
and he fell.
I'll give Lomachenko the credit for taking the fight. But I hear you, but we cannot give him that. We can't say that this guy is all everything.
Yep.
And then say, but, it didn't work out his way, and that's because
he was the favorite, too. He was the favorite in the fight, too.
At a weight
That's
class.
exactly what he's doing.
He was the favorite in the
If you
fight.
campaign at a weight class, you are in that weight class, whether it goes good or bad. Because
Understood.
if he won the fight, we weren't going to say he was the smaller guy.
What I'm saying is that
all the greats have to do that.
I understand that.
I understand that. I understand that. If you
wanna fight
understand that, then what are you complaining about?
But he's not a natural lightweight.
I don't get that, Mark.
Facts.
The thing is, like, he was the man to beat at lightweight. He had the titles. Okay, he was the champion. So I trip out when I see a lot of these tribal fans coming out and defending a fighter solely because you can't accept it as much as this guy can't accept it. Okay, like, and I said this to you. I even said this in a tweet to G Funky. I was like, yeah, for sure, Nato did get the win there, man. That was what you call an Andre Ward jab. He jabbed him, where he made him rethink about his stance of his argument. But I was saying to G Funky, I was like, okay, if that's the logic that you're using, then you know what? Then they should not count the win they have over like Rigondeaux, who had to jump like literally 3 or 2 weight classes to face.
Yeah, I was just about to say
Lomachenko.
that.
Right?
I mean, Rigo's a natural 118-pounder. We know that because now at age 39, that's where he's fighting. Okay. It's very rare for people to go down in weight as they age. It's because he was always a natural 118-pounder, right? A natural bantamweight.
Right.
And he actually moved all the way up to 130 to fight Lomachenko. Where was the compassion and the empathy and the sympathy for?
Why don't you hear
Rigo?
Lomachenko fans saying, "Well, this guy moved up and he got the win, and we shouldn't really count it." Well, Mark Kriegel, that's what I'm hearing. Like, well, we shouldn't really count this loss here because he wasn't a natural lightweight. And what the fuck was your man doing in that division then in the first place? Why were we so excited? He was
also calling himself a champion.
Exactly. And which again, I've never understood why we make excuses for fighters. I've always said if you sign on the dotted line, you're gonna have to go out there, and if you don't have a good performance, sometimes it's just not your night. For Lomachenko, you went out there with a wrong game plan. No, actually, you went in there with a good game plan. You were hoping that Teofimo Lopez, the takeover, was gonna tire out. You thought I could tire him out, and then I could impose my will over you and take the fight. And it looked like that was happening in those late rounds there, Amilcar. You can't not unsee what we watched the night they stepped in October and tell me that this guy looked like he had no business in there with Teofimo Lopez. I mean, he did. He looked like he had no business in there for the first 8 rounds, but later he started stepping it up when he started actually letting his hands go. But he became subjective of any engagement when he felt the power of Teofimo Lopez in that first round. Why, Mark Kriegel, if you're gonna, and I like Mark Kriegel first off, okay, I like him as a journalist because he actually goes out and goes to the gyms and he talks to fighters. He's been on the beat for a long time. But Mark, that should be your argument: is that Vasily Lomachenko was not the better man that night.
No, he was not the better man last night.
What did the kids say? Period. Period. Period.
Or they might say that was all cap from
Yeah.
Mark Kriegel. You know, it's all cap,
Oh.
Mark.
Here's another
Yeah,
thing. Lomo isn't moving down the weight, pride, money, and big fights still at lightweight. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so
well,
if we're gonna go on Lomachenko, I gotta go in a little bit on Teofimo Lopez. I know that my fam, everybody here that joins us and listens to us, are we love Teofimo Lopez. He's the man. He's the it factor. Um, he's the takeover. But you know what? I'm starting to. He's a shit talker, but dude, I don't know what it is right now. I saw him immediately after. Tell me if I'm wrong here, guys. Tell me if I'm out of pocket for even thinking this
yeah.
or even believing this. Okay, but he's immediately after the fight of Canelo versus Smith. He's standing there and he's talking to the fans, and I don't know who he was talking to, but a police officer screamed out from the sidelines, "Hey, Teo, fight Lomachenko, shut him up." And Teofimo Lopez was like, "No, why should I give him he wasn't going to give me a rematch. Why should I give him a rematch?" And it's not the first time he has said this. He said this on other platforms and in front of other fans have asked him, are you going to fight Lomachenko again in the rematch? And even some of his followers, his hardcore followers now, the takeover crowd are
Yeah.
in agreement with him. Like, yeah, he shouldn't give him a rematch. I'm starting to wonder, does he really feel like he won this fight based on solely skill? Or does he feel like he got lucky on that fight? Because,
I think he might feel like a lot of people feel, which is that Loma fought the wrong strategy and was too afraid to get hurt, and felt that he had the experience to beat him in the later rounds, which he clearly did do well in the later rounds, but it wasn't enough to make up for obviously the rounds that he had given up early on.
right.
But the guy that knows better than any one of us is Teo. He was in there with him.
Yeah,
And we can only
exactly.
judge him by what he's been saying, and whether it's to the police officer at AT&T Stadium or whether it's the Max Kellerman on Max on Boxing, he's been clear about the fact that he does not want a rematch with Loma.
And that's just such a turn off. And I'll tell you why, because as a champion, why wouldn't you want to? I mean, unless he's like saying, listen, there's other big fish out there to fry. Devin Haney, definitely the winner of Garcia and Campbell, which we're going to talk about here in the hour of leaving the ring. But in terms of big money, is it wrong for me to still think that there's a lot of money to be made in a rematch with Lomachenko? And is it wrong for me to think that other champions have given other opponents who they clearly beat the opportunity in a match? Comes to mind right away is like, you imagine a Roberto Duran who had just beat the Golden
Leonard.
Child, Leonard,
in Montreal at the Olympic Stadium in
Yep.
front of, what was it, like 80,000 people?
Yeah, you imagine him saying, "I don't want to give him a rematch. I'm not fighting him again." The
The only thing
backlash.
he wanted was a training camp that was long enough to let him lose the 200 pounds he was
Right.
weighing.
That was the only thing. And honestly, that was the only thing he brought up. He never brought up, like, this guy shouldn't get another match. This guy, da-da-da. You imagine the fighters in the 80s and 90s talking like that?
No.
The turn of how these fighters nowadays converse with us fans, hardcore fans, okay, is really different, Like you shouldn't be left up to that decision of whether you fight this guy again. It should be, do the numbers make it, and do the public, do they want to see it? And the more he talks like this, I got to tell you, bro, I want to see this. I want to see a rematch really bad. Not just because of what he's saying by saying, I don't want a rematch, he doesn't deserve a rematch. Also because Lomo has been crying so much, he's entered the Deontay Wilder conspiracy world so bad that I'm like, dude, this makes for a good match. Am I missing something here, guys? I mean, I wish we could get some calls in about this, man. But put in what you guys' thoughts.
I'm actually going to try to bring in a caller right now, Dave. Now that you mention it, I'm going to try to go through Bluetooth on my mixer because the USB, for whatever reason,
I agree with Nato here too. He said, I agree with Dave somewhat. Okay, and that's very rare that Nato agrees with me. Never agrees with me. Loma deserves a rematch, but doesn't need it immediately. I agree with that. I think Lomo should
Hello there.
fight.
Can you hear us? Hello? Yeah, there's
something wrong with with the mix board.
there's
No
something
worries,
off
man.
with my
I would
board.
say
I'm sorry, Dave.
yeah,
I've done everything I can over here.
no worries. We got so much here to talk about. There's no biggie.
Yeah.
I would worry about those phone lines later. But going back to my thought about what Nato said, Fernando had said here about the immediate match. I agree with you. Nato. I think Shakur Stevenson is really talking a lot about Lomachenko. Even now, he's even like propping himself up of being better without even proving it. Without even proving it by saying that he would completely beat down Lomachenko worse than what Teofimo Lopez was able to do. I would love to see that fight happen, and they're both under the same banner. My problem is Lomachenko too far down the rabbit hole the way Deontay Wilder. Now Deontay Wilder's talking about fighting other guys because I think he's starting to see the light at that tunnel that he may not get the Tyson Fury fight because there's a major roadblock there in the name of Anthony Joshua, right? When does Lomachenko start seeing that roadblock in the fact that he may not get that opportunity because there is a big money fight there with Campbell versus Garcia? That is a big fight there, and it's an interesting fight.
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, and this is kind of going to go counter to what we've been saying, but when it comes to Loma in this rematch, to me, it's you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I don't think Mr. Gary Russell Jr. got a rematch, and he's been screaming for a rematch for years. And that wasn't a unanimous decision. That was a majority decision. And I'd like everyone who can and who has the time to check out his interview with Brian Custer. I thought it was very good. I checked it out over the weekend. And he basically outlined all of the issues he had going into that fight, beginning with the back-to-back sauna sessions he had to do and how he just at that time didn't have the knowledge about kind of losing weight the right way. He's been screaming for that rematch with Loma for years, and he hasn't got it. And so I kind of find it ironic now that Loma's chasing the rematch now when he hasn't given a guy a rematch. But I do think that Teo should give him a rematch. But I also think that he should be rematching Gary Russell Jr.
I think so too. Well, I don't know. Gary Russell fights once a year.
According to them, that's because they're saving the PBC fighters and they don't want them to fight him. He's with the PBC,
right?
And they haven't wanted him to take on a Santa Cruz who's very protected, or Mayweather. He's been calling for a Tank fight. He's been saying he'll school Tank, especially if it's at 130, and that's honestly a big fight for the Baltimore DC kind of area, right?
Right.
It's definitely a rival there, and Tank is avoiding that fight. He says Gary Russell Jr. doesn't have a name, so people don't want to fight him.
No, I mean, look, this is where Gary Russell though is. This is where he's wrong. Gary Russell Jr. Same thing with like Lomachenko. Same thing with Deontay Wilder. What they're doing wrong. Really quick, Andre Rodriguez. Lomachenko is still a big name out there. A guy that all the great fighters wants to fight. I think of all this talk from him is a desperate attempt to get a rematch, which is something Teo wouldn't do. We've been talking about that for quite some time. I think it's a tactic that he's using to get underneath the skin of Teofimo Lopez, but it doesn't look like it's working. But let me go back to what I was going to talk about here, okay?
Yeah, all right.
This is my thing. A lot of times, and if you go back to, let's go back to the current era of what we really watch, okay? I'm a 70 baby. I was in the 80s and 90s, okay? But a lot of these guys, what they did in that time, if they wanted to solidify a fight or they wanted a fight because they lost, what they did is they cornered that fighter to give him no choice. And what I mean by that, the only fighter that I see right now that follows that model is Sean Porter. And that's why I like Sean Porter. Sean Porter loses to Errol Spence. What does he do? He starts fighting everybody else. Like he wanted Keith Thurman. He fought everybody else so that it just end up that you have to fight this guy. There's no way around it anymore. That's, you know what I mean? He's the last man standing. You have to do that. I think that's what Lomachenko's got to do here, in my opinion. Okay, I get it. You want the rematch. I get it. Keep talking the craziness that you're saying. Okay, keep convincing. Everybody, even the hardest cores of the Teofimo fans, keep talking and trying to convince them that it's your man that doesn't want to have that rematch. It's your man that is shying away of seeing how great he is. Keep doing that, but at the same time, don't waste your whole career on just that and not fight anybody. You got Shakur Stevenson. You got Devin Haney. Those guys, go out there, take those assignments so that you could see, like you can go back and see, like, okay, Lopez, you're going to fight these guys. Why? Why would you fight my leftovers? Here I am. I'm still standing. The great, Lomata, you getting his ass handed to him, cut up all over the place, the Valentine Massacre. What did he say to Ray Robinson? Hey, Ray, I'm still standing. I'm still here, Ray. You never took me down. You never got me down, Ray. That's what Lomachenko's got to do. You never got me down, and you were supposed to be the power puncher on that night. Go that route.
Yeah. We'll see if it works for him. I got to correct something that Andre Rodriguez said. He said Gary Russell is a guy that fights once per year. A fighter without a belt that only fights 1 to 12 months is something hard to understand. Well, he actually does have a belt. He's the WBC featherweight champion. And as I alluded to earlier, I mean, I'm only getting this from him. He says that the PBC is protecting its fighters from him.
Which I'm not surprised.
I just don't think that the PBC really wants to have their fighters lose to Gary Russell Jr. And all that he gets are guys who I think are pretty good opponents. I mean, I think King Tug was a pretty good opponent.
We were up. Big on that fight.
I can't complain that he's complain about the fact that he's taking on these mandatories. I guess you could say that he should do kind of what a James Toney did back in the day, which is take on your championship mandatories, and then between that, fight a lot of tune-up fights. But he's been trying to get fights with Tank. He's been trying to get fights with Haney. He's been trying to get fights with Shakur. None of these guys will fight him. So it is what it is.
Well, that goes back to saying, like you said, he's saying it's PBC. Al Heyman is putting the roadblock there. That kind of sucks. That sucks for him. But I go back to,
you wanted to get to the big fight on Saturday, right, Dave?
Let's talk about the big fight here.
We got a few minutes left, and we can get into that.
Let's definitely get into the Ryan Garcia versus Campbell. I don't know the odds on that, guys. I'm sorry I didn't pull it up and stuff. I've been talking my ass off here. It is a talk show. So, and we were trying to figure out the phone lines here and stuff like that. But if you want to put on your pick, get it on the record, certainly do. Throw it up here on the chat room, and we'll put it up there. Okay, let's break down this fight here between Ryan King Ray, whatever the hell you call his nickname and stuff. King Rye, Rye Bread. Garcia versus Luke Campbell. Right. Let me go with you here, Amoko. What do you think about this fight, man? Kuhan Luke.
I think it's a very good fight, and it's also a fight that I'm looking forward to. I was telling you this earlier. I like Ryan Garcia's style. Mm-hmm. I like his quick hands. Mm-hmm. I love his hooks.
Yes.
I kind of like the way he boxes tall. I do feel like he leaves his chin exposed a little bit too much sometimes. But he has yet to face a guy with the pedigree of Luke Campbell. And that's what makes for an interesting fight. It's a crossroads fight. Luke Campbell is trying to finally get a crack at a world title and win. All right. This is an interim title. I don't even know why the WBC has this as an interim title, because at this point they got two other belts that are active in this division: the franchise belt and the belt held by Haney. So I'm guessing the winner of this faces Haney. But as I was telling you before the show, I do think that Reynoso has improved Garcia to the extent that I was very surprised with the way he blasted out Duno and Fonseca. I was not expecting that.
Right. I don't think any of us were expecting that. You got to be impressed by that.
I just wasn't. Now let's see how that improvement or training translates over the course of what could be a 12-round fight. I think this will
I
definitely
agree.
answer those questions. And this is why this fight is intriguing. I don't really know how much more adjustments Luke Campbell is going to be making. If I think that Shane McGuigan, that the son of the great Barry McGuigan, is training him now.
Right.
Very young trainer, probably around the same age as like Ben Davidson, one of the young kind of up and coming English trainers out there. And we'll see what kind of a game plan he molds for Luke Campbell, and whether or not they've worked out different things and are going to work on different things in the ring. So many questions are going to be answered in this fight, which is why I'm very much looking forward to it. Luke Campbell is obviously a bit shorter, but he's got a 71-inch reach. Ryan Garcia has a 70-inch reach, so he's an inch taller but an inch less reach. Like I said about the Tanaka Ioka fight that's taking place in Japan, New Year's Eve, I think the jab is going to be key in this fight. Establishing the jab is going to be key for both of these guys.
I agree with that. I had some thoughts about Teofimo Lopez, really quick before I even lose that. I got to go back on this Teofimo Lopez thing, man. I really do. I really do.
He's holding space in your head, man.
I know he did the takeover. He's done the takeover.
He has real estate in your head.
He's done the takeover here on Leave It a Ring, man.
We're leaving in the ring, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't think he's afraid. Let me point that out. I don't think Teofimo Lopez is afraid to give Lomachenko a rematch, but I think what he is trying to do is not what everybody else has done, is give somebody an immediate rematch. We could possibly lose those titles, and then big money's flushed down the toilet. And that's all I'll say. We'll definitely go on to another time next week, maybe talking about Teofimo Lopez. But that's all I got to say. I just wanted to throw that out there before.
Or maybe not, unless we want to call it the Teofimo Lopez in the Ring Radio Network. I
don't know. The takeover of Leaving the Ring. But going with Garcia, talk about the jab here from Luke Campbell. He's an Olympian. Yeah, you know what, man? I know you're impressed. Eddie Reynoso, he's been with Eddie Reynoso. You said you've seen some things. Those knockouts could have been a great boost for his confidence because he was struggling before Eddie Reynoso got into the camp, before he joined the Eddie Reynoso camp. Or it could definitely have hurt him. You need rounds. In my opinion, you need rounds to fight a guy with a pedigree that Luke Campbell brings to the table. Okay, speed, he has it. Garcia's got the explosive speed. He throws a beautiful left hook, a blinding left hook off the jab. I don't know how good his inside fighting is yet. Okay, he's always kind of been bigger than the guys that he faces. Luke is no different, but Luke to me has a lot more in the bag with Ryan. Like if Luke decides to want to box, I think Ryan's going to have some issues because he's going to have to catch Luke Campbell. I don't know if Ryan can cut the ring off. I don't know if he can push Luke back and get him against the rope, not once but twice, more times, okay? He's going to have to really slow down Luke in terms of using the whole ring, which I think that's what Luke's going to do. He's going to, he keeps talking about, I'm going to show this kid something he hasn't seen. And I think that's the thing that they should be working on. I think that's what they are working on. That because the fact that you don't know how good Ryan Garcia's footwork is. Can he close the distance, okay, when it needs to be closed? Could he cut off the ring? Could he outbox the boxer in this fight? Because I don't know if I'm wrong about this, or can you really say that Ryan Garcia is the boxer in this fight? I think he's the puncher. I haven't really yet labeled him as the boxer-puncher.
No, he's the guy with the flashy hand speed and the one-hitter quitter. We haven't really seen him half the box against the high-level guy yet, which is why this is really exciting and why I said it's a fight that's going to answer a lot of questions. Luke, at the very least, is going to ask a lot of questions, you know? And we're going to see if you know, Luke Campbell, the Olympic gold medalist who's come up short as a pro, he's going to be administering a test, and we're going to see if
let's think about this.
If Ryan passes that test, let's see if he gets an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F.
Absolutely. And, you know, Andres says, do you guys think Luke is the hardest opponent Ryan will face till now? Yeah, I think so. I mean, look at Campbell.
Not even close.
Exactly. Look at look at the names on his roster and on his resume. Okay, on paper, if you look at Ryan, there's not a lot of recognizable names. The guys that he has beat or either guys that are like, you know, really tough club fighters or guys that are on the come up where he was. You know what I mean? There was a lot of talks about this so and so fighter. Ryan just seemed to be the better guy in that night. Okay, but you can't take away what Ryan has. And those are the obvious that we were just pointing out. But does experience, and we talked about this about the Ioka and Tanaka fight, okay, does experience come to play in this fight? And that's one thing that I cannot take away from Luke. Mr. Blue put, you know, the twitch of response, quick response from Ryan Garcia. That's something that I'm actually worried for Luke Campbell. Because if Luke Campbell's able to lance, you know, because here's the thing. I think Luke Campbell can fight a perfect fight, but if Garcia clips him, it could be over. And Luke's a tough kid. You know?
He is.
He got hurt with Loma, and he hurt Loma. I mean, Jorge Linares, in all of the weight division, of everybody in that weight division, you got to say he's the best boxer puncher. Above all of them. Best, okay? His only Achilles is jaw. And so, I mean, Luke Campbell went out there and was giving Linares a run for his money. He was keeping up with Jorge Linares, with Lomachenko. And I go again, even having the perfect strategy against Ryan Garcia could end just like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
that's my only worry.
Ryan Garcia is arguably, you know, could arguably the heaviest one punch kind of knockout guy that he's faced. I mean,
above Teofimo Lopez.
Lomachenko definitely isn't that guy. Linares definitely isn't that guy, and neither is Ivan Mendy. And those are his 3 losses, all to top lightweights, all in very close decisions. I mean, the Linares fight was a split decision loss. The Mendy fight was a split decision loss. And the Vasil Lomachenko fight was a unanimous decision, but he hung in there till the very end and was having success.
He was having success, a lot more success than any other fighter that Lomachenko had stepped in with. You know, you know, the thing, like I said, going back with Luke is again, do you go with the more experience or do you go with the fresher? And you got to admit, not only is he explosive, the kid's explosive, he's fast. They call him the Flash. That was his original nickname, Flash Ryan Garcia. But his confidence, man, his confidence level is of a champion level confidence without even doing the whole confidence. You know.
You mean Ryan?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's super confident.
He's crazy confident.
I think that's one of his best assets. I think you kind of need that confidence. But it's got to be guided. It's the kind of confidence that Fernando Feroz Vargas had before he fought Tito. You know.
I like what Shushan said.
He didn't have people reining him in.
Yeah, I like what Shushan Boxing said. We don't know if Ryan Garcia is the next Amir Khan.
This is true as well. But, you know, if he ends up being like Amir Khan,
it's not bad.
Really knock that. I mean, Amir Khan won multiple world titles, so that ain't bad. But he's also been the victim of very bad knockouts.
and very bad matchmaking.
Very bad matchmaking.
Moved up and all that, But no, I don't
Yeah.
think that's a bad company because Amir Khan has been in some great fights. He just couldn't get that marquee fight, I don't think they'll do that with Ryan Garcia. I think they're very carefully, moving him, and I think this Luke Campbell is a good matchup for Ryan Garcia to move up, and
I
test the
also
waters.
think that Amir Khan proved his toughness. I know a lot of people question it because of the low blow and the way the Terrence Crawford fight ended. But if anyone wants to know anything about Amir Khan's toughness, uh, you don't really need to look much further than the Marcos Maidana fight. That was a brutal fight, and he hung in there till the very end, despite getting hurt multiple times. And I also felt like he got the bad end of the stick against Lamont Peterson. I felt that should not have been a loss on his record, especially since Peterson failed a drugs test after that fight.
Yes.
You would have thought that would have just been reversed, but it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. Look, Nato says definitely carries his chin like Amir Khan. That's what I want to see. I for sure, Campbell's he's gonna expose that, and it's so obvious, and nobody's been able to really expose it because the explosiveness, because it's a danger zone. Once you get in that little pocket, that in range of Ryan Garcia's left hook, that's what you got to be worried about. And that's what Campbell's going to have to be worried about. But Campbell's got a good right hand. When he throws it, it's going to land. So this is a very, honestly, very good, interesting fight.
That's what Bradis Prescott was able to capitalize on.
Yeah, exactly, over Amir Khan. So yeah, dude, I think it's a really good fight. I think honestly, man, it's really hard for me to say that this fight's going to end early. I could see a strongly possible chance that Ryan Garcia is going to lose a lot of these rounds in this fight. And then I could see that Luke gets a bit too overconfident and just stays in that pocket and actually does a Amir Khan thing, which is wait for that receipt and Ryan Garcia lands something really big, Or it could be that Luke is so disciplined in this fight and he's on point with his trainers. And this is the game plan. Never be there long enough to get the receiving from the Flash, Ryan Garcia.
I honestly think that that's his path to victory, Luke. Fight composed, utilize the jab, try to dominate the jab game, and don't necessarily try to trade flashy combination for flashy combination. Just stick with your boxing. And if anything, wait for those opportunities where that chin is up kind of high.
Yeah.
And you can possibly pull a Bradis Prescott. Other than that, box behind the jab.
If he's able to bring what he did against Jorge Linares, I think this is going to be a one-sided deal for him. Okay? Because look, with Jorge Linares, he had to set traps. Same thing with Lomachenko. And you're setting traps against very intelligent, high IQ boxers here. I'm not saying that Ryan's not intelligent. Ryan executes when he needs to execute, and he's been very successful at it. But he's been a checker player at this point that we've seen his career. We haven't really seen him be a chess player in the ring. And in my opinion, he's going to have to bring a little bit of that facing Luke Campbell. That's if Luke Campbell's, for some chance, has no legs anymore and decides to do the cardinal mistake, which is go after the young lion to see whether or not he does have sharp teeth and sharp claws. I just don't see him doing that. But what was your pick again, really quick, Amilcar? Because we got to get going here on Leaving the Ring.
Yeah, my pick is kind of what people were saying about the Joe Joyce, Daniel Dubois fight. If it ends early, Garcia. If it goes late, I'm going to start to favor Luke Campbell. If he can stay in there and not get blasted out. If Luke Campbell's there by the 10th, 11th round, by the championship rounds especially, I'm favoring Luke Campbell. The only thing is, will he get a fair decision in Texas? Texas is one of those places where you never know what you're going to get when it comes to those scorecards.
No, I agree with you on that. That definitely he's got to find out. Well, even that game plan that we're talking about, that you're even mentioning right now, his stamina's got to be on point. He's got to be on point because I just don't see Ryan. You know what? This kid is he's a youthful guy. I think he's hungry, for fame. And he knows it's right there in his hand. And I see him stepping it up in those late rounds. I see Eddie Reynoso telling him, you got to do something. You're going to have to create something. And that's when it's going to be that moment. So I agree with you. I think that Luke Campbell brings a perfect plan, brings different faces to this plan that Ryan Garcia has yet to be tested with. Now, let's not say that Ryan hasn't seen it. He's been in the amateur, circle for quite some time. He's been around. It's not like he just kind of like showed up like a YouTuber, okay? Even though we make fun of the whole Instagram bout. But he's been around. There's a reason why people and myself want to watch this kid. We just want to know if he's the next big thing because he looks like he has the potential to be the next thing. But I go with you. I think that Luke is going to do a lot of boxing, not make very seldom mistakes. But I see Ryan picking it up on those late rounds, and I think Ryan gets a TKO over Luke Campbell. And I would have to go with like 10th or 11th round. I think he gets that win.
Yeah, I can see that as well, Dave.
Somebody, Dave. I don't watch the guy, so if he did, I wouldn't be surprised because he copies everybody. You know what I mean? He doesn't have his own personality or his own anything, man.
You're talking about your background at home?
Yeah, I mean, all my magazines, and I've seen a few people actually do that after. Yeah, it is what it is, bro. We start the trends and everybody follows. That's how it is here. No biggie. I actually think it's a compliment. I think it's a compliment when somebody does that and stuff. Okay, man. Anyways, guys, now I hear the sound.
Yeah,
I was able to hear that now.
Okay, well, at the very end, that's too bad. And we'll get it right for next time, guys.
Absolutely, man. Again, everybody, enjoy your weekend. Have a great, happy New Year. Hopefully, everybody stays in. Wear your mask so we can get back to normal here. Anyways, no worries about that. We're going to be back next week. We got our end of the year awards that we're going to talk about, but we first got to get through the Ioka and Tanaka fight. We got to see if that's what's going to hold up to be the winner of Fight of the Year. Very excited about that. I'm Milcar, like always, brother. It's always a pleasure. See you guys next week.
Dave.
Do not drink and drive because you will spill your beer.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, damas y caballeros,